Paul Brown from 16 Guilds. I left DFE about 18 months ago. I spent 30 years at DFE, so still an FE person, so to speak. Mine's about work experience. If I've got a department, which I did have, with 1,500 learners, and I'm inspected by Ofsted, and I've planned, that keyword plan work experience, would there be an expectation that for each one of those learners in that particular year, all of them will have work experience? Or would, and if that answer is yes, God help me, if I was still in FE, to get that opportunity for work experience, and also what duration we'll be looking at in respect to that, if it was a yes, and if it was a no, then would it be expected to prioritise, and if so, which particular levels? 1, 2 or 3 or whichever.
So let me start off in terms, although you asked a very specific question of Ofsted, remember what Paula said in terms of Ofsted only inspect what the government policy is. So where we're coming from is for you to think about work-related learning and a strategic approach for your institution in the context of where you are in terms of what is right for students and local, I have to say, local labour market needs. Now, the reason that the government removed the statutory duty, and it was work-related learning, not work experience, pre-16, was for a number of reasons, and I suspect this will be looked at very closely with the new government. But work experience had lost its way, really, in schools, in that it wasn't meaningful and purposeful. It was something that had become a tick box exercise at the end of key stage for 2 weeks, and I still go around. I've been to FE providers very recently who have in their mind an automatic expectation that we're talking about 2 weeks. So I want to scotch that first of all, and also that we knew that the challenge of working with employers, we wanted to put the resources closest to where young people were ultimately going to go out into the world of work. Now, employers have been up in arms about it. How on earth, why did government do that? Now, that wasn't to say we wanted to stop that exposure to work-related learning, but we did want to stop this checklist, standing by the photocopier, making tea approach. So, you know, I would point you to things like the UKCS publication, Not Just Making Tea. So where we're coming from is a strategic approach that's what's possible, practical, with the idea of developing young people to get as much employability as possible. I don't yet know what's going on in West Herts, looking forward to hearing it, because I know if you've got 3,000 or 4,000 full-time students, try and get them all out on work experience for however long, automatically in 1 year, is a huge challenge. But if you're not even attempting it, then you know you won't get brownie points from Ofsted. So it's about preparing students in a whole variety of ways on a continuum of what is available for work-related learning. The ideal is a week or a minimum of a week, but the idea is to get out externally, having built up where you are in a state of readiness on both sides, and that means working with employers to understand what is possible, what young people are capable of, so sort of managing those expectations. And it's about developing opportunities, and you need a strategic approach for that. Now, some people have coordinators, some people are doing that separately, as a separate unit in the institution. Other people are embedding it in their curriculum areas. But it's also about inspiring young people, using, I've seen some fantastic on the South Coast where young people have jobs, and the tutors are bringing those young people in getting them to talk to other young people about the jobs they're doing, paid jobs. They're thinking sometimes they can tie those into the curriculum. If you remember, it's got to be, you know, planned, organised and supervised if it's a part of the funded provision. But we're looking for creative approaches in terms of building on what already goes on. And this is about this individualised approach, creative thinking, working with local employers and with the ultimate aim of giving everybody that opportunity. I'll stop there, but I'm happy to come back after.
And I would add to that, and then we inspect it. Now, the key thing is the quality of it, and the point is what has been planned. What we don't want to find is when we talk to learners and we ask them, well, what's planned for your work experience or work-related learning? And they say, well, I don't know. Now, okay, you might have a learner or student that says that, but if I follow that up then, using our term, triangulate it by talking to the course tutor, and no, I haven't done anything, haven't found it yet, well, there's an issue. So if it hasn't happened yet, that's fine, but we would expect it to be planned, linked to what that student needs to develop for their progression and destinations. I would pick up with Sue when Sue says about a week. Now, how that week is done, I would break it down probably into hours and how it's done and how you utilise students' time. It doesn't have to be this traditional block, and you'll hear from West Herts how they're tackling it. It's about strategic planning to meet individual students and learners' needs. And then we inspect it.
Thank you very much indeed. Good question, a pretty comprehensive set of answers as well. Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm John French, I'm from Lowestoft College, and we had a meeting yesterday and there were questions were asked around safeguarding and CRB checks and things like that when students are in a work environment.
Okay, so Paula talked earlier about myth busting. One of the challenges that we've had is this mythology that has built up around all these health and safety checks that need to happen. Obviously, it's different in different sectors, and you know the whole set of procedures that the sector deal with extremely well in terms of students who are doing health and social care, where it's an inbuilt, going out into workplaces, an inbuilt part of the environment that you're working in, and the disclosure and barring that has to go on there. You have a moral responsibility, and I'm sure you know Ofsted are checking out in terms of the safeguarding policy, but you have to be very careful in terms of the responsibility that you take on. I think that the key thing is you can't decide whether the environment is appropriate. The employer has to, and if the employer is employing young people, and they often are, they will have their own insurances, public liability, etc., that you need to satisfy yourself that they have. But I would steer you towards information that is on the web, that we are linked through Study Programme Central, from the Health and Safety Executive, which give the clarity and the mythology that had been built up by, 5 years ago, paying the former Education Business Partnership to go out and do all these, whoever does the risk assessment bears the responsibility for what happens. So that's not to the providers, that has to be down to the employers. And I think it's been a real challenge to get through, and there has been a big government challenge to get rid of red tape, and there was a lot of red tape around this area. But there are very clear guidance out there now, and I'm sure Ofsted can say more about what they're looking for.
I want to extend that actually, go off on a slight tangent, but I think as we're all here in the room, it's probably a useful opportunity. I also link with Peter Martin, who's our FE and HE coordinator for Prevent, based in Luton, who I'm sure many of you know. And there's been some myths emerging around, do we need separate policies on radicalisation and extremism? No is the answer from us. It comes under your safeguarding umbrella. It's It's about what you're doing to educate and train and risk assess. Okay, so I thought I'd use that opportunity.
Thanks very much. Probably time for 2 more questions. Are there 2 more people who want to ask a question? Yeah, Andrew.
Rob Shaw, ACER Professional Development Services. Paula, you mentioned one of the foci for study programmes was around skills for progression. I'm just wondering where and how RAPA fits within study programmes.
Well, you remember I was talking about earlier, particularly, I think this is the niche that the independent learning providers fulfil, where they design study programmes around not necessarily a qualification aim, but knowing that a particular set of skills need to be acquired before actually these learners are ready to approach some of the colleges that are in this room. So that's where it sits, and we've seen some good examples. Have a look at some of our independent learning providers in the region where they're providing these programmes, and it's possibly worthwhile going to see what they're doing with some of our most challenging learners, so that they are ready for progression into courses. So it's about using the basics as I described. What skills do these young people need, and then putting together a programme where employability is the overarching aim. And for those of you, it's not dissimilar, but those of you who are dealing with high needs learners, where it's interesting, isn't it, when you think about study programmes, those teachers and trainers who have been delivering programmes for LDD learners have a really strong history in individual plans that meet individual needs. And I would say to you, what's different from the study programmes? You're just doing it with everybody.
Thank you very much indeed. But what I wanted to do is make a little bit of room for a bit of leg stretching and refreshment time. We're going to come back here for 5 minutes. I just want to thank you again very much, both Paula and Sue.